Let's start the session for today. A very good evening to everyone. Moving forward from the place where we stopped in the last lecture, we were discussing about the aspects and different concepts related to quality. And just to recall your memory, we have discussed two quality concepts. One is TQM, which is total quality management, and the second one is quality cost. Quality cost comprises of 4 elements, starting with the prevention cost, appraisal cost, internal failure and external failure. That's what we discussed in the last lecture. That's how we ended the lecture. And the reason why we were discussing about quality cost, that is because we were in the middle of a question, that is question number 2. So let's quickly finish that. Question number 2, we discussed about a lot of aspects about marketing, which is the STP process, segmentation, targeting and positioning. And we discussed about part A. In question number 2, we were in part B. And in part B, the question says describe the advantages of quality ISO standard quality standard ISO 9000 certification to BC4. Let's quickly, let's not read the entire question, but let's quickly refresh your memory about this particular case. Question number 2 talks about a furniture company. Question number 2 talks about a furniture company. This company has so many issues. As at now, the customers are not that happy. There are so many complaints about the products of this particular company. And as a result of these issues, the company's managing director outsources or he consults a particular person to give him some rigid ideas as to how he could rectify the problems that he has as at now. So one aspect or one suggestion given by the consultant was that to go ahead with STP, segmentation. And the other aspect is where since there are so many issues with the product, the consultant says why not gain a ISO standard or why not go for a quality standard. If you get the quality standard, you have to adhere to those principles, you need to adhere to those stringent guidelines. So once you adhere and follow those guidelines, naturally the quality of your product will be all right. So since there was something to do with quality, that's why I discussed about some quality concepts. So we discussed about TQM, total quality management, then we discussed about quality cost towards the latter part, and today we'll discuss about Kaizen, and then let's move into the answer. Guys, Kaizen is a Japanese concept. This is a Japanese concept which talks about continuous improvement. That's the main idea. The main, the core point, the main substance of Kaizen is it's all about continuous improvement. And I have the video, but I think it would take some time to show that video here, and I think you could check it out at home. Please go and watch this particular video. Maybe you can watch it at YouTube. It's called the TPS. TPS is the Toyota Production System. It goes under the Toyota Way. The Toyota Way. So if you just type it on YouTube, there is a nice video where they explain about the Toyota Production System. You can have a look at it once you go home. TPS has so many fundamentals, and one point or one core concept that Toyota follows is this particular concept that we are discussing now, which is Kaizen. Kaizen is continuous improvement. Now guys, if you look at the Toyota production system, they follow a JIT system, what we call as a just-in-time, and the production happens in what we call as a cellular layout. Cellular layout is something like this, and you have cells. We call these the individual places where the compartments where they assemble the vehicles is what we call as cells. So there are different tasks happening here in terms of assembling and getting the automobiles properly online in line with the production process. Now, when you have this cellular layout, to get things done in a more efficient manner, they follow the Kaizen principles. One example that I can quote from this particular system is where they say in the day-to-day routine work that they have to do, there is one point where employees in each of the cell, so this would be assembling, taking care of quality checkups, checking whether the brakes are okay, and about the body shell, maybe about the engine. There are so many things happening in each of these cells, and a particular employee who is working here is what we call as a multi-skilled person who can work in any cell in the Toyota production system. So I think you should watch that video to get a really good idea about these concepts. But let me relate this part of Kaizen as to how they use it in the TPS or in the Toyota production system. What happens is in their day-to-day routine work process, there's one point where people who are working, the employees who are working, they gather for about, let's say, 5 to 10 minutes, and they discuss as to how they can make the process much more efficient. They discuss about as to how they can make this some more faster, as to how they can add value to this production process. Now that principle comes from this Japanese school of thought, what we call as Kaizen. So the main co-concepts of Kaizen is what you see here. These are some, there you go. Kaizen elements, teamwork. So Kaizen is all about continuous improvement, how you can make the production process improved, how you can make it more value adding, how you can take out all the non-value adding activities, and how you can make this a more proficient as well as a more efficient production process. So teamwork is important. Now that can be seen in the Toyota way, where all the employees who work in different cells, they gather together, they have what we call as a brainstorming session. They give different ideas as to this can be done like this. And they have something called takt times. At any given time, an employee, if he sees a defect or if he sees a particular issue in the process, there is a red color button which he would press, and that would indicate that there is a problem in a particular cell. So all the other employees, maybe in the service centers, would come and rectify it. And then they would have a discussion on this as to how they could not make the same mistake again. Now that is a classic example on Kaizen initiatives. So teamwork, personal discipline, improve morale, right? Everyone's suggestion is taken into account. It might be a minor staff, or it can be a person who was recently recruited, it can be a senior employee, it doesn't matter. Whatever the suggestion given in the Toyota production system by an employee will be taken into consideration. At least it will be documented, it will be recorded. Employee A has mentioned something like this, please look forward and see as to how we could make this and implement this. And suggestions for improvement. So guys, now when it comes to Kaizen, actually there is no question specifically on Kaizen. Right? It talks about quality as a whole, but these are the main quality concepts which are like hot models, such I would say. Models that can be tested. TQM is a very favorite topic. We discussed that in the last lecture, so no need to allocate time on that. Then comes the quality cost is very important. The quality cost, the technical terms of quality cost, you could always use it in your answer writing. And further, the Kaizen principle, which is a Japanese school of thought. So they use the 5S method, which is something that you're aware of as at now. Sorting, simplifying, sweeping, standardizing, and sustaining. the 5S. This is again another Japanese school of thought. So Kaizen combines all these individual elements and looks forward as to how they could continuously improve the production process. It's all about continuous improvement. So the very moment you come across, or the very moment you hear this particular concept Kaizen, it's all about continuous improvement. These are some narrative discussion, benefits of Kaizen. It reduces waste, inventory waste, time waste, workers' motion. In the sense, if everything is all about continuously improving the process, things will happen quickly. There won't be times where there won't be a deadlock in terms of what they are doing. There won't be idle time. Everything will work according to the plan, and therefore you could reduce the wastage in terms of time as well. Kaizen improves space utilization and product quality. That's the main core element. Results in high employee morale and job satisfaction. Why? Because they consider all the suggestions of employees. Just guys, we as accountants just picture, just put ourselves into those shoes and just think about what are the instances where we get to provide suggestions regarding, making the production process somewhat efficient. I would say very minimum. As accountants, or maybe you're an assistant accountant, maybe you're in the treasuries, or maybe you're working in an audit firm, right? Team working is there, of course, but generally it's a bit of an autocratic style that is taken into consideration. You have a leader and not a leader, or a head, and you have to work according, and it's a chain of there's a hierarchy, and there is a head, and you have to follow, or you have to obey, and you have to adhere what is said to you, and it's basically reporting and moving forward. Rarely you will get a chance where you would get such. I'm just talking about the majority. Some of the organization doesn't do that. There might be a minority where suggestions are accepted. But the very moment you listen to this Kaizen is all about continuous improvement. In this particular slide, I have given you an example about the Toyota system, which I just explained to you, because at the end of the day, it might be TQM, it might be Kaizen, or it might be quality cost, or whatever the elements that we discuss. You should have a rough understanding about what they are. At this level, looking at the verbs, looking at the requirements that are given to you, now you understand that it's not about how good you are in memorizing the textbook. It's how good you are in writing an answer so that you score a lot of marks. To score a lot of marks, you need to be case specific, number one, and number two, you should have the application skills at a really good level. So I think I've been telling this on a repetitive basis. The reason is maybe there are new students who have come for this particular session, and the main cue that you need to get from this particular lecture is that when you are preparing for your exams, it's about the main essence of that particular concept that you have to keep in your system. TQM, I'm talking about a philosophy which has 6 guidelines: competitive benchmarking, teamwork, then supplier quality, getting it right in the first instance. There are some fundamentals when it comes to TQ. What is quality cost, prevention cost, appraisal cost, internal failure, external, we went through that. If you have the core idea about it, you're fine. Kaizen talks about continuous improvement, and what are the implications of this is what matters. And on top of that, when you're going through these particular concepts, one important point to note is that once you have absorbed the main essence of this concept, when you are writing your answer, when you are constructing the answer, that analytical skill is also important, that critical thinking. So you put, maybe you can write this for a suggestion as to how they could improve quality. And whenever you are doing that, that critical thinking, that analytical answer writing is also important, where you talk about the good side and the bad side. These are some limitations of Kaizen, which I think is very important, because the very moment you get this in a particular requirement, and when you want to discuss about the cons or the limitations or the drawbacks of Kaizen, then you can talk about this. Resistance to change, that we will be discussing under change management also. Now guys, generally when it comes to improving quality, XYZ employee comes and says, let's do it like this. And it seems good, sounds good. It will improve the quality or it will improve the production efficiency, blah, blah, blah. But there are certain employees who would not like to adhere to it because they are so comfortable with what they have. So resistance to change. Although it's good, although it might be a cost saving in the long run, there are certain employees who will not like it, because they are very comfortable and they like what's happening as at now. So the challenge would be how you could tackle resistance to change. Lack of proper procedure to implement, not having a proper plan, too much suggestions may lead to confusion and time waste. It should be done in a more efficient manner. Kaizen is all about coming up with brainstorming sessions, quality circle sessions, and having more and more ideas in a production process like this. This is just for automobiles. It might be any company, any industry. It's all about coming up with so many suggestions and filtering the most important ones so that you could implement it one day and have a cost saving in the long run. But what happens is, the bad side of this is you have so many suggestions, and if things are not working, then we have a problem. Then it becomes like the parliament of Sri Lanka. So many suggestions, but nothing is happening. Then comes difficult to implement the large scale process where analyzing requires a lot of time. So maybe you need to come up with pilot testing. You need to come up with certain procedures as to how you could see whether this would work for you or not, etc., etc. Now these points you can have about 2 or 3 in your mind, just by, if by chance there's something, there is a question, there is a requirement where you have to recommend Kaizen, recommend TQM, recommend a particular model, and then when it comes to that analytical answer writing part, you have to throw some limitations and drawbacks. Then you can put these into your answer, or into your answer plan, or into your content. So that's very important. So guys, these are some quality costs that we discussed, TQM, quality cost, and Kaizen. Let's move into question number 2, part B. So as I just mentioned to you, question number 2 talks about a company which is a furniture manufacturing company. And currently they have so many issues. The issues are that there are customer complaints that the products are not up to mark, it's not par with the quality, so they have a problem. They get a consultant says there is no proper segmentation done. Since there is no proper segmentation, we have discussed about the advantages of doing a segmentation, and further he says, why not go for a quality certificate like ISO, so that you would be par with quality. So let's look at question number 2. This is part B. Describe the advantages of quality standard ISO 9000 to BC4. Now guys, if you got this at the exam day, just give me a second. Yeah, if you got this at the exam day and if you were asked to construct the answer, if you just brain dump what you get in the textbook, such as it will improve the production process, it would reduce it would reduce takt times, or it would minimize the waste, quality will improve. Those are some general points. Okay, now for example, if you are saying the production process will be efficient, how? Can you remember at the very first lecture I said that how and why approach? That when you are writing the answer, that how and why approach is important. I am just talking about the answers written by the majority. If there is a student who is attempting this particular paper for the second time, and because you had not done a print, or because you were unsuccessful in your first attempt, maybe you were writing a lot of general points. Now when it comes to advantages for BC4, it's okay to extract the name of the company. BC4 would be more efficient in their production process by adhering to the quality standards. Now that is not a good point, because you have just mentioned it and you have not mentioned how. Okay, how is it going to be efficient? And you have to write some advantages so that it would be a remedy, or it would be a solution for the current issues that they are facing. The case gives you some issues. So the advantages should be tackling those issues also. That would be a good answer. So I have mentioned some points, guys. Let's go through that. The managing director feels the significant benefits of BC4 might arise through gaining a quality standard, and this is a small introduction. So guys, how many marks for this? You are looking at 10 marks. Ideally, your answer structure for this particular question would be so if this is your page, you come up with just one sentence which you talk about this. This is too much actually. But 10 marks, I would say minimum, you need to come up with at least 4 benefits. So guys, you might say the efficiency of the production process would improve. Okay, fine. That would be your first point. So you don't need to come up with a bullet point. You can come up with the first heading. Improved efficiency. Let's say that is your first benefit. Improved efficiency is your first benefit. All right. Then you have that as a heading, and then you say how. How is it going to be a benefit for BC4? Generally what would happen is, you just say improved efficiency to BC4, since quality standards would do blah blah blah, but sometimes that particular answer is not case specific. So this would be the first benefit, second benefit, third benefit, and then you come up with the fourth benefit. No need to put bullet points. You come up with a heading and you justify your answer. Come up with a heading, justify your answer. Come up with a heading, justify your answer. And then the examiner, who is the person who is correcting your paper, knows, okay, this guy has come up with an introduction and this is the first benefit, and now he is explaining how this would be relevant to BC4. So whatever you are writing here should be relevant to the issues that they are currently facing in this particular company. So you have the benefit and you justify how. You have the benefit and you explain how is it relevant to this particular company, BC4, which is a furniture manufacturing company. Now let's go through some benefits and what needs to be included in the content. First one, improved efficiency. Okay, how? The management consultant has identified differing operating efficiencies both within and between BC4 factories. Guys, first point is, in this case they say that there are different efficiency levels in different factories. That means, let's say there are 3 factories A, B, C. A is doing good, B is marginally okay, C is not doing good at all. That means they are not operating at a standard efficiency level. That's the problem. So if you adhere to the quality standards, you are trying to say that this would be rectified. So second point is as to how that can happen. By gaining ISO 9000 certificate, BC4 will develop a system that should lead to standardized practices. Now standardized practices is where every factory will follow the same thing. Now currently what's the problem? Problem is, let's say there are 3 factories A, B, C. A is doing really well, it's very efficient, B is moderately efficient, C is below par, below average. So that's what we call as differing efficiency levels. So if you come up with the quality standards, all the 3 factories will operate in the same efficiency. That's what we call as standardization. Standardization is having the same standard. So that's a good point. So guys, I think I have listed about 6, not necessary. 4 is more than enough. If you come up with 4 good points, the examiner has to give you at least above 6 or 7. I mean, I'm not telling that you need to have exactly this. You might come up with a different. Now, you would have wrote the same thing. Reduction in time allocated for inefficient operations. Something like that. And you justify it. That should be okay. If the correct justification, if you have done it correctly. Greater productivity and the maintenance of consistently dependable processes. So this is the benefit that you are trying to say. So guys, now you cannot write the same thing for all the questions. Now you get a learning outcome here. The message is you might not get the same question. But the learning outcome is the very moment they give you a case, in that case there are certain issues that the company is facing. And when you are to write an advantage with reference to a particular model, this is how you need to write the answers. You mention a particular issue that they are facing and then you give your solution to it. That is the just way. Now guys, before this, if you just say BC4 operations would be efficient by adhering to the ISO standards, since it will make the process very efficient and effectiveness will increase, and that would result in increasing the sales. That is just a general point. You have not justified your main, by having this answer layout where you come up with the benefit, then justify, that gives that opens a particular avenue where you have to justify. So guys, I think I thoroughly recommend you to go ahead with this. I thoroughly recommend to go ahead with this topic and justification part, so that once you have written the benefit and then when you are trying to justify, you will think of something to justify, which is a situation where you will end up writing something where you are trying to justify what this benefit is all about, rather than just writing the main benefit. So there is a chance, there is a high probability where you would score a lot of marks. Moving forward, that's the same point. Let's look at the next point. Elimination of inefficiencies. Now this is the same thing from another angle. The need to agree upon common modes of operating and standards to be achieved will allow BC4 to identify the most efficient process. So driving out bad practice and inefficient operations. So once you come up with a standardized system, you get to know what is good for you and what is bad for you. What is value adding, what is non-value adding. So take out what is non-value adding and go ahead with the ones which are value adding for you. Next one, mechanism for quality control. The need for control of quality records according to the standard at all locations where operations essential to effective functioning of the quality systems are performed means that once a recognized mechanism is in place, an effective quality control mechanism can be established. Compliance can readily be assessed by conformance of a particular operation to the agreed standard. Guys, what we are trying to say is, what is quality control first of all? This talks about quality control in the requirement. Quality control is where you set up a particular mechanism. That is a procedure. When you are producing furniture, do it like this. These are the particular materials that you have to take. This is how you should get it from the warehouse. This is how materials should be handled. This is how the designing should be done. And likewise, you have some standards. This is what we call as standards. You set the standards according to the certification that you are getting. And then you look at the compliance. Compliance is whether these people are following this or not. If they are not following, take immediate action so that you bring them back on track. So that is quality control. So if you can come up with a good standard, if you get the ISO standard, that would facilitate quality control. At the end of the day, by doing this, this is a very prominent benefit, that is customer satisfaction. The management consultant has identified a trend in increase in return goods. Now guys, see, this is directly plugging a particular point from the case now. In this case, they clearly mention that there are certain goods which are returned. Why? Because they are not happy with what is given to them. So there are return goods. So if you come up with a good quality standard, this would minimize, and as a result of that, you would retain your customers. By retaining the customers, you can talk about a knock-on effect. Now guys, when you come up with these benefits, there are something called knock-on effects. Now see what will happen. You come up with a quality standard. Once you come up with a quality standard, you adhere to certain standardized practices. Then as a result of that, you come up with good quality control. Once you come up with good quality control, you ensure that there are no defects, there are no issues in your product. Then you give it to the customer. Those days customers are complaining, now they are not complaining. Why? They are happy. Since they are happy, you will have repeat orders. Once you have repeat orders, that would spread through word of mouth and you will attract more customers. Then then your market share would increase. When your market share increases, that would increase the top line. That's like a knock-on effect. This happens for every benefit. These are some tactics I think you would have understood by reading the answers. So once you mention one benefit, that benefit has a knock-on effect where you could extract so many other benefits. So at the end of the day, it would end up by increasing the profit of the company, which is the bottom line. So this is so what you can do is you can come up with different names for this. Now I have called customer satisfaction. You might say increase in customer preference. You might say retaining customers. It doesn't matter. One thing which you have to understand is there are no black or white answers for these questions. If there are 100 students here, they will write 100 different, their benefits would be different from one to another. Now, I have written customer satisfaction. You might say retaining customers, having repeat orders, having repetitive customers or customers repetitively buying your product, increase in market share. That's the knock-on effect. So once you come up with one benefit, there is a knock-on effect for so many other things. So guys, this is what you have to keep in mind in my opinion. So just to read that, the management consultant has identified a trend in increase in return goods which require replacement, reworking and significant number of products returned as a part of extended guarantee agreement. This is what I have extracted from the case. This means that the customers are not currently receiving products of the quality they expect. The standardized practices guaranteed by a company complying to ISO will mean that consistently dependable processes and products will help to reverse this situation. So guys, what I am trying to say is by coming up, adhering to the ISO standards, you will be able to tackle this particular situation. This particular situation would reverse. In the sense, you will not have people complaining. They will be happy instead. And you are being more focused, and as a result of that, that's the knock-on effect. Then comes another one, improved employee morale, which was one part of Kaizen. Now guys, see what you have learned under TQM. It might be certain elements that you have learned, but you can always include them when you are writing your answers. Now, employee morale or teamwork was discussed under TQM. That's why I discussed that initially, and it was also a core element in Kaizen. If you want to continuously improve the process, you need to have teamwork and as well as employee morale should be there. Basically, employee morale is listening to the employees, getting their suggestions, making them part and parcel of your production process. Now guys, if you take a company like Elephant House, and I can remember the Elephant House, they had a small issue in 2011 or 2012. That was in 2011 in the beverage sector, there was a small drop in profit share. And when they investigated why, the reason was, if you take the Elephant House bottle, generally the liquid will be filled up to this point. It won't be filled up to the lid. It will be filled up to this point. But there was an issue with the equipment and machinery that they were using, and it was filled up to the lid. It was a small particular amount, a small amount. But that was the root cause. Once they did the investigation, and when they digged and when they went to the root cause, this was the root cause. So once they got their, technical staff, and once they got it rectified, they brought it to back level. I was there in that CSR. It was a competition where they had to present a case, and Elephant House, they are the ones who won it. I can't remember exactly the numbers. If I'm not mistaken, they said after bringing it back to the point which it was supposed to be, they were able to sell some additional, I can't remember, about 3,000 or 4,000 additional bottles for a day. Because it's large scale mass quantity, they produce in bulk for the whole of Sri Lanka. I can't remember the exact numbers, I'm just trying to figure it out, but they said they were able to sell a substantial amount of bottles by rectifying, tackling that particular issue which they had in their product. Now that is something to do with what we call as not giving proper attention to the quality standards or for the main ingredients that you use in a particular product. This is what they called as overfilling. That particular issue, they called it as overfilling, but it was just a very trivial amount. But once they had rectified it, that was the case. So guys, employee morale, so that's one point. BC for external reputation grows, employees will be proud to be associated with the company. They are happy to be part and parcel of the company. The fact that the standard implies a need for the workforce to take control over its processes and documents its work process will mean that it will feel valued. One of the good companies that we have on a global basis where employees are treated at the highest level would be a company such would be a good example would be Google. There was a recent video where there was an interview with the head of HR at Google, and she says, she's a lady, and she says that before they recruit a particular employee, he or she needs to go through at least 10 plus interviews at different continents before they are recruited to Google. And once they are recruited, and once you issue the letter of appointment, and once they become an employee, once they get the contract, they don't monitor the employee in a stringent manner. You don't monitor the employee. Arrival, departure, fingerprint, those are not a standard, it's not a standard practice at Google. As long as the employees work according to the deadline, as long as they accomplish the task which was given to them, the HR department is happy with the employees. That's it. And that, I mean, if you look at majority of us, our attire is very formal. But in Google, they can come up with shorts, they can come casual. I think majority of you all might be aware of this. They are not worried about the attire, they are not worried about anything. But as long as it's an IT company, true enough, as long as the employees adhere and accomplish the tasks that are given to them, the HR department is happy with them. So there you go. Now coming back to this, A key message for BC4 to emphasize is that quality is not the responsibility of one person. It is everyone's responsibility. This is a classic point taken from TQM. Can you remember in TQM I mentioned, it is a philosophy which requires everyone in the organization. And I gave you an example, even the security person who is working for a franchise company. Or I think I gave you the example of the person who opens the door in a hotel. I think I quoted Mount Lavinia Hotel, the guy with the hat. Even he contributes to quality. Because if he doesn't smile or if he doesn't respond to you in a very courteous, polite manner, if he doesn't respond to you and react to you in a very courteous and polite manner, you would not want to go to that hotel or restaurant or whatever the business sector it is. So you would always like to see a person greet you very well. So that's part and parcel of quality. So everyone, it's everyone's responsibility. When it comes to employees, it's everyone's responsibility to contribute to quality. Such an attitude should lead to an increase in employee morale and positive organizational culture. So guys, I think we discussed about 4 elements there. This is about enhanced company reputation. At the end of the day, branding, everything will be in line. I think that's a very clear point for you to understand. Let's quickly go through the last point, the last requirement, of this question. This is a 5-mark one. Discuss briefly how the production manager's suggestion could benefit BC4 as part of an alternative quality control system. Discuss briefly how the production manager's suggestion could benefit BC4 as part of an alternative quality control system. Guys, if you look at the latter part of this particular case, in the information that they have given, they say the production manager has, however, previously suggested to him that the way forward is to employ dedicated quality control inspectors as part of a quality control system. That means to have supervisors, to have employees to check quality. Now this is a bit of a conflict, or it's a converse argument with the theories that we have learnt, like TQM. Because in TQM, they don't say to have a quality control department to check for quality. Get the quality right in the first instance. That's the basic principle in TQM. TQM says, do not wait until a defect happened and then come up with remedial procedure. Don't do that. Get the quality right in the first attempt itself. So there you go. So let's look at the answer plan. The managing director appears to favor ISO 9000 accreditation, but the production manager has advised him to employ dedicated quality control. So you are giving a brief understanding about what the managing director and the production manager has suggested. The use of quality control inspectors in itself would only be effective as part of a full quality control system. So the question says, discuss briefly how the production manager suggestion could benefit BC. So we are not supposed to counter argue this. Oops, what's that? Let me off. My apologies. So as I said, guys, we are not supposed to counter argue this. That we might not, you should not say, no, it's not necessary to have quality inspectors. But we have to mention, but if you had quality inspectors, how will the company benefit? First benefit is potential for quality control and subsequent ISO accreditation. But by having quality supervisors, by having quality inspectors, that would facilitate quality control. The use of dedicated quality control inspectors is an example of quality control mechanism traditionally found in a technical production process. This is a traditional, it's a traditional practice. No? Likewise, we had in all these production or in these organizations, every organization had traditionally, they had a quality control department. The quality control department, their main responsibility is to see if there was a defect in that product, to go ahead and to detect that particular defect and to rectify it. So you saw this in the garment factories, maybe you see it in automobiles, etc., etc. The quality control inspector's task would be to compare the actual quality of the products produced with the expected or previously planned quality standard. That's very simple. So guys, what is quality control? Quality control is you have a standard at the beginning. These items should be there in our product. So once you have got the output, you check, the quality inspector would check whether those particular preset standards are there. If it's not there, he needs to investigate why it's not there and he has to rectify it. If it's there, he's okay. Moving forward, sufficient for BC's force needs, ISO accreditation, like Total Quality Management, the European Quality Foundation model, is a quality assurance system. It should, however, be acknowledged that the quality assurance systems are in certain ways superior to quality control systems in that they attempt to create rather than control quality. However, the use of quality control inspectors and quality control systems generally may suit BC4 immediate needs more readily. Yes, currently, because the organization is currently facing some staggering issues. The staggering issues that the company is facing is that the products that are offered to the customers are being returned. There are particular complaints, before the guarantee period has lapsed, there are certain products which are being returned to the company. So therefore, since there are stringent quality issues, rather than moving to a TQM like a massive comprehensive philosophy, in the short run, it would be okay for the organization to go ahead with quality control inspectors, so that you rectify it, you get a solution for the issues that you are facing as at now, and once you have rectified in the long run, you could go ahead. Reduce external failure cost now, guys. More than reading this particular, more than reading the points which I have noted there, see, reduce external failure cost is a technical term that you have learned under quality cost. Now, I would say there's a very important point here. Majority of the students, now you have learned about these main core areas about quality. But sometimes you might wait until you get a question on quality cost only, to extract something like this in your answer. Now, this is about a standard, adhering to a standard. But as part of the answer, I am saying it would reduce external failure cost. What is external failure cost? External failure cost is once you sell a product to the customer with a defect, and if the customer complains, that would have a damage on your reputation. That is external failure cost. If by chance, if the customer is not happy, and if by chance, if he is really unhappy, and if he takes legal action against you, the penalty cost that you will have to pay is also external failure cost. By the way, what is internal failure cost? Internal failure cost is there is a defect in the product, there is a problem with the product, but before it goes to the customer, you rectify it internally. You rework, maybe you go ahead with maybe you stop the entire batch. So that is what we call a stoppage cost. You stop the entire batch and you rectify whatever the issue before it goes to the customer. External failure cost is there is a defect, it has gone to the customer and you get to know about the defect from the customer. So that would damage your reputation, it would damage your brand. Yes, I think I gave an example that external failure cost, classic example is what happened to Edna. Because I think I explained about that, so no need to discuss. Edna, there was a chemical, I can't remember what it was, and they denied. They said no, there was no problem with the chocolates that was available in the market, but there was a chemical which was harmful, and at the end of the day, what you see as at now is they are out of the market. I mean, they are still there, but they are not par with their competitors such as Candos. Candos was able to move forward and grab the market share in a much more rapid manner. But what they would have done was, as a good corporate citizen, they would have acknowledged or they would have accepted, yes, there is an issue, it's only in this batch, we are sorry or we apologize. After this batch, everything would be fine. If that happened, there would have not been an issue, but it has been something that they have been continuously having, so that was the repercussion that they had to face. Moving back, taking remedial action where quality does not meet standard, followed by immediate action to remedy any breach of the tolerance would reduce BC4's external failure costs. So yeah, therefore, if you have quality supervisors, they would identify an issue before it goes to the customer. They will detect the issue before it goes to the customer. So therefore, you will reduce your external failure costs because the customer will not get a product with a defect. So guys, that's a good point. Not only you are using a technical term, but on top of that, it is very case specific as well. Direct address of any organizational weakness. The management consultant has confirmed that no systematic quality control exists and differing operating efficiencies exist both within and between BC4's factories. This should be seen as a strategic weakness of the organization. The production manager's suggestion might be seen as a direct addressing for these matters. Yes. So guys, what I am trying to say here is, as at now, the consultant has identified that the factories that this particular company has is operating under different efficiencies. As I said, if there are A, B, C factory, A might be doing really well, B moderately and C lower. So if you have a quality inspector, he might standardize the quality practices so that all the factories will be operating in the same efficiency level. So I think that's more than enough for you to briefly explain about the benefits of the quality inspectors, which was a suggestion given by the production manager. But I'll just quickly go through, there's one more, speed and cost. You will increase the speed of getting things done and you might save some money, so that would reduce your cost. So no need to go in detail of that. So guys, I think with that we complete question number 2. Let's go to question number 3. Can you please read question number 3 very carefully? Question number 3, the learning outcomes, the theories that will be covered from question number 3 is listed there. We will be discussing about the pest analysis, then the Porter's 5 forces, as well as the Porter's generic strategy, which are very favorite topics when it comes to a subject like this. And if you had screened through the past papers, that's one, you would understand that those are some favorite topics of the examiner as well. So question number 3 is on that. Can you please go ahead and read the question? Maybe you can allocate 1 minute, and after that we'll discuss these models and let's move forward. The pest analysis, we can go through it quickly because it's not a new model for you. The pest analysis is a model that you have been knowing for some time. Maybe we should discuss, allocate more time on Porter's 5 forces and the generic strategy. But just to begin with the pest analysis, it's an environment screening model. It would screen out the environmental factors when you are trying to sell a product. So we call this as an environmental screening model. When you are trying to sell the product in the current existing environment, what are the opportunities that you might have and what are the threats that you would encounter? So the opportunities would be certain aspects that the company should give more weight to capitalize and move forward. Threats should be carefully handled. The threats that you might encounter should be carefully handled, right? Recently I read an article about Rolls-Royce as to how they articulated the pest analysis when they moved to Vietnam. And that was a very good article because the pest analysis is not that used in a much more stringent manner, but Rolls-Royce company, they had implemented or they have initiated the pest analysis when they shifted or when they wanted to venture into Vietnam. So, maybe I can give you some insights on that. So, analysis is this analysis is essential for an organization before beginning its marketing process. Consists of internal environment and external environment both, but more or less it is a external environment. It's an environmental screening model. So, environment can be broken down into two, internal and external. Break up. So, this is pest analysis for you. Now, there is a, give me a second. Yeah. Well, there's an extended version called PESTEL as well. So, political, economic, socio-cultural, technological. And we have PESTEL stands for ecological and legal. But PEST would do, right? PEST would do. Well, political factors. Guys, when you are trying to go through this model, just have 4 good points, just have 4 solid points about the political system in terms of how it is important for a business. Now, when a company is trying to sell a product, one point that they, in terms of the political system, they need to be very careful about things such as property rights, how to get the land ownership in terms of coming up with constructions. Will that come? Will that government allow us? And is that company, is that country into bribes? Now, when Rolls-Royce, when they went to Vietnam, one threat that they encountered was the government was into bribes. And the other point was that they had pressure groups where they thought Rolls-Royce comes to Vietnam, they pump in money, get the profits, and the profits will be sent to the parent company. And there is nothing that the Vietnam citizens would gain. So, how did they tackle that? They got more employees from the native country and they did a lot of programs for the native people there. So, like training and development, skill development, things like that, just to show them that look, we are a good corporate citizen as well. So, political factors, property rights would be a very important point. Property rights, if the government is very autocratic, if it's like a dictatorship, sometimes there will be issues in terms of how, how to what extent there is a transparency, or to what extent do you have your property rights in coming up with constructions, buildings, etc., etc. Of course, if it's a democratic background, things should be okay. So, likewise, guys, so how sustainable is the political environment? As at now, is there political stability in Sri Lanka? Not really, right? There have been so many rumors moving here and there as that the current government would have to leave and there is going to be a new government. So, in a situation like this, political stability is not at its or it's not achieved. Political stability is not achieved because there have been so many rumors. So, investors would be reluctant. Investors would be reluctant to come. So, political stability is very influence on government policy law. How this is property rights is connected to this. How good is the legal system? Government position on marketing ethics, bribes comes under this. Bribes would be factored under this. So, that is one point where Rolls-Royce, when they wanted to go to Vietnam, the company was into bribes, but they carefully tackled it. Government's view on culture under religion. We had so many, I think in the past, when James Packer wanted to come for an investment, there were so many pressure groups in Sri Lanka who was against it because it is not in line to the culture in Sri Lanka. And when there were so many issues when this night races, when they had this night race phenomenon, there were so many pressure groups who were against this because it's not in line with the culture. But at that point it was okay because political stability was there to a certain extent. Because because of that government and how they used to, govern the particular country. But let's talk about that. It would venture into a political discussion. But anyway, moving forward, government's view on culture and religion is very important. As far as Sri Lanka is concerned, we are very, very we are very, very concerned. We are very, very concerned about the impact to religions such as Buddhism, mainly Buddhism, then the other religions, as well as when it comes to race, ethnicity. There has been issues in the past, so we don't want things to happen again. So even if depending on the investment that comes, these are certain points that you need to take into consideration. So those are political factors, nothing to worry. Moving forward, political system is responsible for lawmaking. Then the legislation aspect can be discussed under this. Environmental protection, things like greenhouse gas emission, carbon emissions has been a very prominent discussion on a global basis. Global warming and CO2 emissions, carbon emissions has been a very prominent discussion on a global basis. So is the government enforcing these rules? Is the government into this? What is the government's view? So even when in the things that we just discussed now, marketing and advertising cigarettes, tobacco, alcohol, it has been a very, there are stringent measures taken. I heard that today there was an increase in the price of cigarettes, and so there have been so many, there are heavy taxes imposed on this. These are certain political factors that you should take into consideration. And the other point is the thing which we just discussed about quality. When it comes to quality, it is the duty of the government to ensure that proper quality is maintained. Now, Sri Lanka, we have this entity called the Consumer Affairs. The Consumer Affairs organization, where they look into whether the consumers get a qualitative product. But in South Asia, you don't see these I would say guidelines or the policies or the points that are being stringently stipulated followed, and the government doesn't monitor them as well. In South Asia, Sri Lanka, India, same thing happens. I think India is worse. When it comes to India, it's a very dangerous scenario because they have these quality checkups and the results are not that good. I can remember there was one point where a person went into, there was an article where a person goes into this restaurant in India, he orders for a roti or chapati or whatever it is. And once he is dining, he sees human hair. He sees a piece of human hair. And then when they went for the investigation, when they went inside, apparently this guy is a bald-headed guy. He doesn't have any hair. And he takes the flour and he puts it in his chest, and that's how he get the roti done, right? So that's the process followed there. So he doesn't have any hair, so he takes whatever the flour and he applies here, and that's so that's how. I wonder how he makes and the other thing is he doesn't have one arm as well. He doesn't have one arm; it's just one arm, and he just this. I wonder how he makes the uluduwadi, which has a hole in the middle. Okay, I don't know how that is done anyway. Coming back to the next point, we can discuss more on let's move into economic factors. The current economic system, inflation rates, interest rates, economic growth, economic growth is GDP growth. These are some prominent points that you should consider. The interest rates, the currency, fluctuation of currency, very prominent points, guys. I think you get the whole of that, so no need to discuss further on that. These are some economic factors that you should consider. Culture is a very, very important point. I'll give you an example for this. Demographic is, things like age, gender, etc., etc. Lifestyles, we discussed that under segmentation, targeting and precision. I think no need to discuss more on that, but I'll just give you one point about culture. Now, if you look at these franchise companies like McDonald's, they have located their outlets in different countries, but they have a local element to it as well. Now, if you take in Sri Lanka, they have something called the Sini Sambal bun. Now, you can't have something like that in France. You can't have something like that in Europe, because that doesn't make any sense for them, Sini Sambal bun. But in Sri Lanka, it's a good deal, or it's where they add a local element to it. Now, in France, in the outlet, in the McDonald's outlet, they allow beer. They allow beer because having alcohol is a normal, it's a normal gesture, or it's something normal when it comes to a country like France. They are very well known for alcohol. So having beer is normal when it comes to a place like that. So that's how I would say how culture works, or how the companies have given more prominence to culture in selling and branding their product. So there you go, that's socio-cultural. And moving forward, technological. Oh, we can talk days and days of this. Sri Lankan are the standardization in terms of IT, information systems, I think every one of us would agree, is still at a lower, very, very lower level. I'll just give you a simple example. In France, a person is only allowed to keep 500 euros in his wallet. It's 500 or 300, I can't exactly remember, something like that. Only 500 euros, unless you're a tourist, you're okay. If you're a tourist, you're fine. But I'm talking about the people who are living there, you can have only 500 euros in your wallet, if I'm not mistaken. You can have only 500 euros, but if you need money to make a payment or settle down a payment, etc., if you have taken money from an ATM, you need to have that slip. You need to have the slip with you, the bank slip, or the slip that you get from the ATM. If not, I mean, they will take actions against you. The police will take actions against you. And once the ID, I think Sri Lanka, they are trying to implement something like that. There is a small SIM card in their NIC, and once you insert it, you get information about, even starting from your grandparents. Starting from your grandparents, your mother, where do you live, your location, everything. You just include the SIM, everything. There's a massive database that they have. That's the level at which they have their IT systems. Sri Lanka, we are not still at that level, sadly. So, and the other point is, it's the debit cards that they use there is a bit different. The debit cards, everyone is, now even if you go to a food city there, once you include the debit card, now in Sri Lanka, if you go to the food city, you give the debit card, he or the lady who is in the counter, she puts it into that particular equipment, and then she will get a receipt and you have to sign it, and she gives you the card. But there, once there is an equipment which is similar to what we have in Sri Lanka, but she gives you that particular equipment, you have to put your code. So because majority of the payments are through debit and credit cards there. So once you are making a payment, you need to make the payment where you have to include the code or the password or whatever the code that was given to you. So that's the level at which the IT systems and the information systems pitch at countries such as France, Europe, UK, even in Scandinavia, in America. But South Asia, we are still not up to that point. Even if you take like countries like Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Pakistan, still we are not up to that mark. So yeah. So guys, that's about the pestle factors, and that's about Rolls-Royce. I said how Rolls-Royce, how they encountered, how they move forward, and how they came up with the pest analysis when they moved into Vietnam. But That's about the pest analysis. I think we should not allocate more time on that because it's a model that anyway you all guys are familiar with. Let's discuss about this, Porter's 5 forces. Now, Porter's 5 forces is a model to screen or a model to evaluate the competition of a particular company who belongs to a particular industry. It has 5 elements, as you can see here. Let me go to the main, yeah, there you go. That's Michael Porter. And those are the 5 elements. Starting in the middle, competitive rivalry within the industry. And then on top, you have threats of new entrants. That's the first force is in the middle, threats of new entrants, threats of substitutes. In the left, bargaining power of suppliers, bargaining power of customers. So guys, let's take some time to discuss what does these elements really mean. So moving forward, threats of new entrants. Now, if you're in industry and if there are so many people entering into this industry, naturally that would build up competition. I think before Laugh Gas entered Sri Lanka, it was Shell Gas who had the who had the monopoly power in terms of the gas industry. So the government introduced Laugh as well, and now there is a competition. The benefit goes to the customer. Same story before Dialog, and before these other mobile networks came, it was Celtel. And Celtel, it was converted into Tigo. Tigo became Etisalat, and that's how it moved forward. But now, if you look at the rates that we pay, if you look at the packages and the benefits that we have, it's huge because of competition. So, if you are a company and if there are new people entering the industry, naturally it becomes a threat if you're a small fish in a big pond. So, if you have a massive stake, you have nothing to worry. If, for example, Coca-Cola will not worry if there is a new cola company coming into this industry. Why? Because they are huge. They are huge and they have nothing to worry. So, the threat of new entrants, when you're commenting about it in your answer, you need to see how big your company is. And depending on how big and how sizable your company is, then you could comment on whether this company will become a threat for you or not. So that's about threats of new entrants. The next one would be threat of substitutes, and I've given you some examples. Guys, although you're in the same industry, to what extent is your rival selling a product which is very, very similar to you? If you take the beverage sector in Sri Lanka, cola products, then these cordial products, then the milk packets, there are so many rivals, so many industries, so many entities which are fighting for market share. So it will come under the beverage sector. So when we say threats of new substitutes, you look at your product and see what would be a substitute that the consumer can shift, which is very, very similar to what you offer. If there are many, obviously it is a threat for you. But if it's not, you have nothing to worry. Guys, now if you look at search engines, so you can see Google, Yahoo, and you have so many other search engines. But the most prominent search engine is, without a doubt, Google, right? So Google knows that, of course, Yahoo is there, and there are so many other search engines. However, because they are so confident that the other entities cannot match what they offer, it is not really a threat for them. It is really not a threat for them. So likewise, we could move ahead with so many other examples. Now, in terms of smartphones, there is a tiger competition between Samsung and iPhone. However, both are trying to fight for the same market share, and it is a threat of substitutes. So when it comes to threat of substitute from an examination viewpoint, what you need to see is, you are offering a product, is the rival company offering a product which is similar to you? Now guys, let's take an example like this. Cargill's ice cream and Haagen-Dazs ice cream. Not exactly a threat of a substitute. Haagen-Dazs ice cream is a premium ice cream, as I discussed. It's not available in Sri Lanka, but just assume that if we are to compare these two products, Haagen-Dazs ice cream is a premium ice cream. A tub would be about, let's say, it will be about 10 pounds or 11 pounds. So you are looking at 3,000, 4,000, where the same ice cream can be bought here for about 400, 200. Right? So that is a premium ice cream, and this is, it's an average product. So Haagen-Dazs ice cream will not consider Cargill's as one of their strongest or very prominent rivals. At the same time, Cargill's will not also target Haagen-Dazs as a very prominent rival, because it's not a direct substitute. Cargill's offers an average product, this is a premium product. So this is what we call as threats from new substitutes. You look at the product that you're offering to the market, and then you compare and see, is the rival company also offering the same type of product that I am giving? If so, then I have a threat. Alright, moving forward, this is the intensity of rivalry among the established firms. That is the one which you saw in the middle. So the rivalry among the firms, how fierce is the competition? Now, how do you determine that? If there are so many firms, the competition is going to be fierce. If there are so many. If there are few firms which has large market share, which we call as an oligopoly market, that also creates massive competition, which would eventually result in what we call as price wars. Now guys, if you take Dialog and Mobitel, if you take the mobile network industry in Sri Lanka, it's an oligopoly market. What do you mean by an oligopoly market? You have few firms with large markets. So then sometimes that could lead to what we call as price wars. Dialog says per second we will charge 30 cents. I'm just giving an example. It's a Mobitel, if they cut down the price, Mobitel says we'll give it at 24. Dialog says we'll give it at 16. Mobitel says we'll give it at 9. And it might go to a really lower level. At one point, maybe the other company would say, if you take a call, we'll give you money or something like that. I don't know. But, that's the bad side of price wars. Both the companies, their top line and the bottom line might diminish. So this is one point which we could consider when we discuss about the how fierce is the rivalry. So there you go. That's intensity of rivalry. Let's move into the next point. Bargaining power of customers. So guys, to what type of customers are you selling this product for? Now, if your buyers, if your customers are large, now guys, I've given you some examples here. Let's go through that. Bargaining power of customers, example for Coca-Cola. Depends on the marketing channel used. Now, this is a classic example. If you take the Coca-Cola brand, they would be selling, their customers would be supermarkets. Right? Now, if the supermarkets are buying in bulk, and suddenly for some reason, if they don't give the contract back again, if they are buying in bulk anyway, they have a higher bargaining power. Obviously, they have a higher bargaining power. Right? If it's like vending machines, the small machines that you see that you can get Coca-Cola restaurants or food stores where you're selling in smaller quantities, it's not a big issue. But you should be very careful to tackle your customers who are buying, who are loyal to you and who would amount to a massive market share in terms of what they purchase. So naturally they would have a high bargaining power. So I said bargaining power of a buyer is high for fountain supermarkets and mass merchandising because of the low profitability and strong negotiation power of retail channels. Guys, if you look at even when it comes to placing those products, when it comes to the beverage area, if you look at the first few shelves, Coca-Cola, then comes Pepsi, and then the other cola. If you take toothpaste, the places where they keep the toothpaste, initially comes Signal, then Klogart, etc., then the other brands. So the supermarkets place their products in the shelves according to how loyal they are to the main brand. So this is what we call as the bargaining power of the customers. So when you are trying to comment about this in an exam situation, you need to see to what extent are you selling this product to that particular given customer. Is it a company, or is it a retail? Is it a retailer? Is it an individual, etc., etc. So this is what we call as bargaining power of suppliers. The last point is the bargaining power of suppliers. A good example that I could say is, now let's say the Apple company, when they're producing the phone, let's say this particular screen, this is a HTC phone, but let's assume that this was an Apple phone. They say the screen, you need to buy it from a particular supplier, and there is only two people or two entities from which you can get that particular this particular glass or whatever the equipment, or maybe the circuits or whatever it is. Let's say there is only two suppliers from which you can get this particular material. Then the bargaining power of the supplier is very high, because he knows the company has to depend on you. It has to depend on those entities. So if there are few suppliers, the bargaining power is very high. But if there is a number of suppliers, if there is a massive number of suppliers, then the bargaining power is low, because the suppliers know that if the company is not happy with the prices they quote, the company can shift into so many other suppliers. We have so many options. So the point that you have to keep in your mind, which is very simple to understand, is the lower the amount of suppliers that you have, they have a high bargaining power. The greater the number of suppliers that you have, the bargaining power would be less. That's all. Guys, you don't need to memorize all these 1500 words that you have. This is the basic idea of the Porter's 5 forces. If you keep that in your mind, you can evaluate any case that is given to you. So, bargaining power of suppliers, bargaining power of customers, threats from new entrants, threats from substitutes. And then you have the intensity. Intensity talks about the fierce competition. Now, when you get a question, now there is a particular, in this particular question, you have to comment about Porter's 5 forces and the PEST model. Is all about getting the information and putting them under each component and justifying your argument. That's all. But prior to that, guys, what you have to know is you need to have that rough understanding. So yeah, that's bargaining power of, that's the Porter's 5 forces. So we have discussed 2 models. What we'll do now is let's go through the case and let's go through the answer. So let's read the case. PDF. Let's go through the question. This is question number 3. So let's go through the question. CB is a recently qualified chartered CA. So he's an accountant. He has just started a job as a marketing accountant for a newly built hotel, the Futurist. Alright, so we have a guy who is an accountant. He is an accountant for a newly built hotel called Futurist. Currently, the Futurist has no marketing staff. The hotel, which has not yet opened for business, so that means they are not still undergoing any operations, intends to generate profits from its rooms and its restaurants. Right. So they are trying to generate money from the rooms and the restaurants. However, other hotels in the local area get much business by providing wedding package. That means the rival companies or the other hotels that are there in the vicinity, they make more money by offering a wedding package. A wedding package usually includes a provision of a venue for the wedding ceremony. That means the hall that in which you will have the wedding ceremony, a meal for the wedding guests, so that's basically the plate in our words, so the cost of the plate, the meal for the wedding guests, entertainment after the wedding, and overnight accommodation. So it's like that candlelight dinner, those stuff. You get these wedding packages, they candlelight dinner, beach, those stuff, and entertainment after the wedding, and overnight accommodation. So basically you can stay there. So that's something similar to what I think Montelaine Hotel, they have a very similar package. So check-in is at around 3, so after that you can have the ceremony, you can come back and breakfast, and that's how it goes. Accommodation for entertainment of wedding and overnight accommodation for the bride and groom. These competitor hotels market their weddings in a number of different ways. One hotel, the Deluxe is a competitor, situated in a castle in a beautiful rural setting, charges a minimum price of rupees 10 million for its wedding package. 10 million, that's 100 lakhs, no? Which includes a meal for 100 guests and rooms for a bridal party of 10 guests for one night. So guys, that is premium pricing. That is a premium pricing model. So that's what you talk about there. So yeah. The Deluxe has won many international awards for its food and for the high standards of its facilities and bedrooms. So naturally guys, now see, these are they're giving information about a competitor. Now this is going to be very important information for you when you are constructing the answer. So by now, by now the summary is, we have a company, we have a hotel called the Futurist. We are trying to get money from, now we are trying to get money from the restaurants and the rooms, but we are interested in coming up with a wedding package. So we are screening the environment. We get to know about one rival called Deluxe, they are charging a premium price, and it has a premium price for the unique product offering. And that's, I said, now that's the scenario. In contrast, another competitor hotel, the Royal Albert, offers its wedding package for 100 guests for a total cost of 2 lakhs. So guys, that is cost leader. Now, this is, I think, important information for the Porter's generic strategy. In the Porter's generic strategy, which we had to discuss today, in the Porter's generic strategy, we discuss about 2 elements: cost leader, differentiation, and then the focus. Focus is like for a niche market. So cost leader and differentiation. Cost leader is you become the lowest cost manufacturer. Lowest cost manufacturer, why? Because you want to attract more market share. Now, Coca-Cola is a classic example. Small prices, massive market share. And then at the same time, you have differentiators as well, like a Louis Vuitton shoe, a Rolex watch, Mont Blanc pen, etc., etc. These are premium prices. So Deluxe is a premium hotel. So 10 million is 100 lakhs. No? That's just for 4 hours. Unbelievable. People spend. We call it as conspicuous consumption. People spend money to show their social status. That is what we call as conspicuous consumption. So we have a market like that in Sri Lanka as well. I know this for a fact. A particular a member of parliament, I cannot disclose the name, goes, because my friend of mine had worked there for an intern in Hilton. So this guy goes there, and for breakfast he has a sandwich with sambal, because he's used to that. Sandwich with sambal, 2 slices. So he consumes it, and for the tip he puts 5,000 bucks. The 5,000 note, that's the tip, and he goes. That's what he does every day. Not every day, the day that he visits Hilton. In the morning, breakfast, just the sambal and bread, which is a sandwich, about 2 of that, and the tip is $5,000, and that is lavish lifestyle. So anyway, we should not discuss about that, but that came to my mind anyway. Coming back to our point, the Royal Albert is a budget hotel situated next to a busy transport interchange in the nearby town. There are another 5 hotels which the future regards as comparable. So guys, then Deluxe is there, Royal Albert is the cost leader, and there are another 5 more. Right. So these other hotels charge between 7,000 and 10,000 for each guest attending weddings at their hotel. CB has been asked to join a team consisting of the hotel general manager and the restaurant manager. Now, CB is the accountant. You will be playing the role of that accountant, and the restaurant manager formulate a strategy for futurists to offer a wedding package. Now, this is a very practical scenario. It's a very practical scenario, but if you look at the first requirement, it says, identify 2 models that the team could use to analyze the external environment, briefly explain. Guys, there are so many, but the most prominent models that you would use is the Pest and the Porter's 5 forces. So that's the reason why we discuss those 2 models first. Now, this is for how many marks? This would be for 4 marks. So ideally, you just mention the 2 models and you have to say as to how you think it will be useful to screen the environment. So ideally, guys, you are not expected here to write about all the factors and the elements in these models, but you need to say as to how you would use them. So let's quickly go through that since it is 4 marks. There are 2 main models used to analyze the external environment. Porter's 5 forces model, which examines the rivalry among the industry, and I have given you the 5 points. Right? And further, the other model is usually referred to by an acronym PEST. This model analyzes the external environment in terms of its political influence, so economic, social, and technology. The PEST model has been supplemented by additional ecological and legal factors produced in the PEST. So guys, here really you could be case specific, because the reasons is identify. Now that is the way I have highlighted it as well. Identify 2 models that the team could use to analyze the external environment. Briefly explain the models. So little relevance you can give it to the case, because they have not actually asked as to how it is directly applicable for the case. But if you want, you can. If you want, you can list 2 or 3. Economic environment. You could talk about the purchasing power of the people in that vicinity. The purchasing power, whether they are really wealthy or the average income holders, etc., etc. As far as the socio-cultural, what type of a culture is it? Is it like a very forward culture? Is it, since it is in a rural area, the culture cannot be expected to be, they cannot be what we call as extroverted. Extroverted people are people who are very forward. In general terms, we call them very forward. They say hello, hi, and etc., etc. That is extroverted people. The introverted people are ones who are very conservative. In Sri Lanka, we get a lot, the majority of, if you take in general, I would say majority are a bit, it's an introverted culture that we see. Males, okay, you could say that they are extrovert, but females, I think, very much into introverted. That's the culture. But that's the opposite you see in Europe, in UK, in other countries. So I think males are anyway extroverts, you're a bit forward, and because that has been the case. But when it comes to the ladies or females, it's a bit of an introverted culture that we see in South Asia, because that's something to do with the religion, cultural aspects, how we were brought up and all this other stuff. But in order to comment about this, if you want, you can bring few examples. Socio-culture, you can talk about the culture. Technological, to what extent are they having good technology? So you can mention a few factors there. Guys, moving forward, this is where the application comes to. Second point. Question number 3, part 2. Explain how these models could assist the team in formulating a wedding package strategy for the futurist hotel. So now you have to comment as to how you can use these models for the team to come up with a wedding package. So guys, what I will do is, since it is 6 marks, why don't you come up with a small answer plan as to what you would write at the exam day. Just, can you please jot down 3 points, see 6 marks, 3 points maybe that you would jot down in the answer plan. The answer layout. Explain how these models could assist the team to formulate the wedding package. So if you had mentioned about the Porter's 5 forces as well as the pest analysis, ideally you would, for 6 marks, your answer layout would, if this is your page, you could say application or illustrating Porter's 5 forces, or application of Porter's 5 forces, and application of pest. So guys, you have a topic and you explain what happens here. You have a topic, you explain 1 point. So ideally in the mind, or in your mind, you are thinking maybe he will give me 3 marks for this and 3 marks for this. So application of Porter's 5 forces, this is a point where you are not supposed to. You can talk about the models, you can talk about the elements in all those models, about the political factors, etc. But more than that, what is important is how you can use it to formulate a wedding package. Now, application of Porter's 5 forces talks about the competition that you have in the industry. But application of pest analysis talks about the external factors or the environment as a whole, in general. So moving forward, let's look at how these are included in the content. Application of Porter's 5 forces. The 5 forces model can be used by the team to assess how fierce the competition is. Now that is an important point that you need to include in your answer. Just to see how fierce, how daunting is the competition. That's why you will be using 5 forces, because that's that they're asking. Explain how these models could assist the team. Further, this will then enable the team to appreciate how profitable this new strategy is likely to be, and enable it to decide whether or not it should enter this market. So guys, what you are trying to write here is how you are going to use the Porter's 5 forces model. As you can see here, I have not taken threats from new substitutes mentioned, justify that. Then customers bargaining power, suppliers bargaining power, I have not mentioned. Because that's not what they are asking. They are asking us, explain how these models can assist the team. When you are writing or when you are constructing your answer, here and there you can put in certain points which are in those elements. But more than that, from an helicopter view, you are supposed to give as to how it's going to benefit. How it's going to benefit the team. By using the Porter's 5 forces model, how it will benefit the team. This will there. So that's what we just discussed. Further, if the futurist decides to enter into the wedding business, it will be competing against 7 other hotels which are offering a range of different prices to different market segments. So that is what they have given us about competition. So guys, as I said, in the first point or the first element of Porter's 5 forces, it talks about the rivalry, how fierce the competition is. When you are trying to measure and gauge how fierce the competition is, you need to know how many firms are there, who are your competitors, to what level is the competition hitting. Therefore, an analysis of the industry where the 5 forces model could avoid the futurist making a mistake with regard to its competitive position and enable it to exploit which of the 5 forces appear to be favorable. So guys, this is how we are going to use the model. What we are trying to say is, you see the threats from new entrants, you see the threats from new substitutes, you see the customers' bargaining power, you see the suppliers' bargaining power. And then you see from these 5 factors, and the other one is intensity of the rivalry, from these 5 factors, what are the forces which are favoring you? From the 5, at least if there are 3 or 4 in favor of you, it's good for you to go ahead in the market. But if there is only one force which is supporting you and all other 4 forces are against the company, this futurist company, then it is a red light which blinks saying, don't go ahead. Now, what is important is the very moment you see the Porter's 5 forces model or PEST, sometimes you might think Porter's 5 forces model or PEST, or even for that matter, it might be another model like balanced scorecard or STP, what we discussed, 4 Ps, 7 Ps. The very moment you see these models, you know that there are certain elements inside these models. Then naturally you tend to write the element and write something under that particular topic, which is something you should not do. Unless if that is the requirement, it is okay. But you should carefully read the question and see what exactly is the examiner asking. In this particular question, there is no need for you to say customers' bargaining power and write something under that. No. They are asking how can they use Porter's 5 forces and how is going to benefit the team who is trying to formulate this wedding package. Therefore, an analysis of the industry where the 5 forces model could avoid futures making mistakes. So that's what we discussed. This is about the 5 forces. Let's move into the PEST. The PEST model should assist the team in arriving at an informed understanding of the external environment, which should enable the team to devise a strategy that better fits the needs of the market. That's why I said Porter's 5 forces talks about the competition only. See, if you look at intensity of rivalry, threats from substitutes, customer bargaining, supply bargaining, all these elements are directly talking about competition. But PEST analysis talks about the environment as a whole, where it talks about culture, the political system. It's not only about competition. It talks about culture, the political system, the technological system, etc., etc. So what you're trying to say is, by using the PEST analysis, you try to say whether actually is it legal for us to go ahead with a wedding package like, can we do it? Is the political factors in line? Is the economic factors in line? That is very important when you are trying to set a price. When you are trying to set a price, it's very important for you to know what is the prevailing purchasing power in that vicinity. Are these people wealthy? What is the income levels of these people who are living in that vicinity? So the PEST model should assist the team in arriving at an informed strategy. That's what we discussed. Second point, it will also assist the team to understand how the various factors within the model are changing and also direction of future trends. Political system, how is it moving further? How political stability would move further. Then in terms of getting license for these certain things, can we get it? Will the government be is it going to be with us? How is the economic system moving forward? Is it good in terms of purchasing power? Is it getting worse in terms of purchase? Are people happy in terms of the economy? Are they not satisfied as far as the economy is concerned? So you could get the trends by analyzing the PEST model. For example, an understanding of the likely future popularity of marriage and social factor is a social factor, will be very important of the teams. So, the popularity of marriage, now that is something of course which is relevant to the culture in which that vicinity is embedded to, because different people, they take their the marriage ceremony or the wedding, different people take it in different ways. Sometimes depending on the race, depending on to what culture you belong to, everyone doesn't go into a hotel also. Now, if you take the Hindus or the Muslim friends, they take, it's a different ceremony that they have. So the Hindus, they have a different, Hindu friends, they have a different ceremony. So likewise, so what is the popularity of getting a wedding in a hotel? You need to initially measure that. So that's a good point to talk about. Further, the team may also find that some of the factors are interlinked. For example, popularity of marriage is linked to the levels of income. First of all, you should be able to afford. Should be able to afford it. You are spending a thumping amount. Now, if you are going to take a wedding at this deluxe, you need to have 100 million is, it's 10 million is the cost that you will have to spend. So, can you afford it? Is the next question. If we are trying to come up with the wedding package, what should be our price? Can they afford it? Is the next question. The team could refine the pest analysis to identify the key drivers for change. These are the factors which are likely to have a direct important bearing on whether the strategy will prove successful. Example would be the trends of disposable income. That's what I just said. The income levels of age 20 and 30, because they are the ones that this would be your initial target market as far as STP is concerned. So, in terms of your segmentation and deciding on a target market for the wedding package, this would be your target market. Now, if you are trying to categorize your target market in terms of age, that is where you are following a categorization based on demographic trends. Can you remember? You have demographic trends, psychographic, likewise. If incomes are rising, customers may be willing to spend more on their wedding, which will influence the price of the team first in order to set a wedding held in the future is. So guys, this is 6 marks. If you want, you can have a tiny conclusion. Both of the models can be used by the team in the initial stages of formulating strategy. So it talks about a conclusion, but I highly doubt whether you need to go to that extent in coming up with a conclusion. But as far as the two models are concerned, this should be your answer layout. You come up with what Porter's 5 forces is, and then you come up with what the pest analysis would bring into the table. What we have to discuss next is the generic strategy. We'll quickly discuss that so that next day we have just 2-3 minutes left. We'll just quickly discuss the generic strategy and let's move forward. Guys, the generic strategy has 3 main elements. The Porter's generic strategy has 3 main elements, actually 2 main branches. One is the cost leader. One is the cost leader and another one is the differentiator, which we just discussed. And then in the middle, you have the focus. In the middle here, this is what we call as the generic strategy. Generic strategy. So, cost leader is all about becoming the lowest cost manufacturer. Example, Coca-Cola. As I said, I think I have an example. The example would be Coke, because their per unit cost is very low. The purpose of pricing the product to that extent is to attract massive numbers. So that's a cost leader. So guys, cost leaders can move into things like price wars. They make their product cheap, and the reason is because they want a broad market. Broad market is extracting more market share. Differentiator is, guys, basically a differentiator would be a company which wants to give a unique product offering. Now guys, this is a Mont Blanc pen. It will cost about, as you know, it will cost about 80,000 or 90,000, but it's just a pen. But the reason why people buy it is because they think that there is a unique value for that particular product. So you could customize it as well, personalize, sorry, you could personalize it by having your name. So that's Haagen-Dazs ice cream, which is a premium ice cream. Actually, they don't target it for the kids because there is a small element of alcohol in it. That means not heavy alcohol, like once you don't go like that, but small element of alcohol. The advertisements are placed in such a way that it's they don't, now in Sri Lanka advertisements would be like kids having ice cream, but here it would be a couple, and that's, I think, Bradley Cooper is in it. So that's how they market it, because there's an element of alcohol in it. This is a Louis Vuitton shoe, guys. I think, as you know, it will cost about 4 lakhs LKR, but people buy it, and that's how it is. That's lavish lifestyle. That's a Rolex watch. This is all that you need to know in terms of differentiation. Differentiation is offering a unique product, giving a unique offering. This is what they call a unique, because it gives a unique product offering. They charge a premium price. Cost leader becomes the lowest cost manufacturer. Purpose is to attract more market share. Example, Coca-Cola. Likewise, you can go ahead. In Sri Lanka, the newspaper companies are cost leaders. The Sunday Observer, whatever it is, those are cost leaders. Attracts massive market share. And if you take jewelry, those are differentiators. Vogue jewelers, those are differentiators. It's very expensive, isn't it? Vogue jewelers, it's very, very expensive. And Vogue jewelers, Raja jewelers, those are in the jewelry industry. It's very expensive because they give you a unique product offering. Focus strategy, we need to discuss more on that. So I'll stop at that point. We'll discuss focus strategy and move into the remaining part of the question. Thank you very much for your time. I'll see you tomorrow.